One of the most successful producers in Hollywood right now is Chris Meledandri. With his running of Illumination Entertainment, his name has been on one incredibly successful movie after another. However, he had a fascinating career even before he founded his own animation studio, and you definitely saw his name in the credits before the Minions came into existence. His first credit was on the movie Footloose, where he was an assistant to producers Craig Zadan and Daniel Melnick. Continuing to work for Melnick, Meledandri got his first producer credit on another Kevin Bacon movie, Quicksilver, on which he served as an associate producer. Meledandri and Mark Gordon then joined forces to start their own production company. His first film as a principal producer was the low-budget independent thriller Brothers in Arms. He also produced the Dana Carvey comedy Opportunity Knocks. He helped develop the historical drama Swing Kids, which he received an executive producer credit on, and the legal movie Trial by Jury. When Meledandri and Gordon decided to part ways, he was hired to serve as president of Don Steele's new production company. Steele, who was previously the president of Paramount and Columbia Pictures, had a deal with Disney, which is where he first dabbled in making films that appealed to a family audience. Meledandri was an executive producer on Sister Act 2, Back in the Habit, and most notably, Cool Runnings. He then jumped over to 20th Century Fox, where he was hired to serve as a senior vice president of production. He worked closely with John Hughes on some of his movies at Fox, but the higher-ups were also paying close attention to how Cool Runnings would perform. When that film became a box office hit, Meledandri was asked to help run Fox's Family Film Unit, initially as vice president before being promoted to president. Fox Family Films had a mixed track record, but Meledandri has credited his time there as an important one in helping him learn how to navigate a competitive field and finding the most appealing films for a family audience. One of the unit's biggest gets was the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie. The Power Rangers television show was already a hit on the Fox Kids blog, so they were on good terms with Saban when they decided to release the big screen movie. Even though critics and parents rolled their eyes at the movie, it was a success with the target audience of children. The sequel saw a huge drop in attendance though. Fox Family Films was also responsible for the monkey comedy Dunstan Checks In, the Christmas movie Jingle All the Way starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, Home Alone 3, and the Cinderella movie Ever After. It was around this time that Chris Meledandri started to see the potential in animation. Don Bluth and Gary Goldman had been brought in to make animated films for 20th Century Fox, the first of which was Anastasia. That movie was a solid box office performer, becoming Bluth's first hit in years. Inspired by its success, the decision was made to have Fox Family Films produce exclusively animated movies. Even though there were plans for the unit to produce a remake of Fantastic Voyage and a Goosebumps movie, those did not move forward at Fox. Curiously, Monkey Bone was originally going to be produced by Fox Family, but the finished film would end up aimed at a more adult audience. Around this time, Fox also saw potential in an animation and visual effects studio they had acquired, Blue Sky, and they started developing their first feature film, Santa Calls, based on the book by William Joyce. Fox Animation Studios went all in on the feature film Titan A.E., but it was a massive box office flop. After the movie came and went from theaters and Fox lost about $100 million on it, Meledandri was worried his career was over and he would never be allowed on the 20th Century Fox lot again. However, Peter Chernin, the CEO of News Corp, still saw potential in him and tasked him with running Blue Sky and helping them make their first feature film, which would not be Santa Claus, but instead an original script titled Ice Age. Producer Laurie Forte first pitched the movie to Fox in 1997, and it was initially a more serious story with the intention of having Don Bluth direct it as a hand-drawn animated film. However, it was instead given to Blue Sky, and they were told to add more comedy. With Chris Meledandri as executive producer and Chris Wedge directing, the film went through the usual animation revisions, although the failure of Titan E still made Fox nervous about pursuing another animated movie. Thankfully, Ice Age turned into an enormous success. Meledandri took what he learned from Titan's failure and really tried to key into what audiences wanted to see in an animated film. Ice Age succeeded thanks to its endearing characters, winning humor, its themes on family, and of course a saber-toothed squirrel inspired by classic Chuck Jones cartoons. Chris Meledandri would continue to serve as executive producer on Blue Sky's next batch of films, including Robots and Ice Age The Meltdown. However, in 2007, during production of Horton Hears a Who, he made the surprising decision to leave Fox and Blue Sky and start his own animation studio, Illumination, signing a deal with Universal Pictures in the process. He also brought along with him Blue Sky artist Chris Renaud to serve as a director on the films. Audrey Geisel, who was impressed with how Horton adapted her husband's book, also agreed to let Illumination make more animated Dr. Seuss movies. In building up Illumination, Meledandri decided to have the animation done outside the United States, choosing the French studio MacGuff to animate Illumination's first feature film, Despicable Me. He also decides early in development whether to move forward on certain movies or not. These are the principal reasons why Illumination's movies don't cost nearly as much as the average Disney, Pixar, and DreamWorks animated movie. In hindsight, Despicable Me seems like it was always destined to be a big hit. However, it was not considered without its risks within Illumination and Universal. For one, you have a new animation studio and a brand name nobody had heard of entering a space already dominated by the likes of Pixar, DreamWorks, and Blue Sky. Sure, Meledandri pulled it off before with Ice Age, but that does not mean he could necessarily do it again. Within Universal, other executives were concerned about putting the word despicable in the title, and the decision to have the movie be about a villain with few qualms about doing rotten things to others. Since this was the first Illumination film, it was advertised as coming from the executive producer of Ice Age and Horn Hears a Who. The movie opened in the summer of 2010 and was a massive hit with audiences, and the very things Universal's execs were unsure about but Meledandri remained confident were exactly what made it appeal to children and other viewers. And of course, it introduced the world to the Minions, who have become the most recognizable element of Illumination. The following year, Illumination would buy MacGuff's animation unit, which would prove instrumental to the appealing look of their films with viewers. When Chris Meledandri formed Illumination, he also wanted to make live-action films. The first of these was Hop, a live-action CG hybrid about the Easter Bunny. That movie performed fine and was profitable, but it would become the only film of its kind produced by Illumination, and it remains an odd outlier for the studio. In addition to a Dr. Seuss biopic starring Johnny Depp that never got off the ground, Illumination also passed on making films based on The Addams Family, Clifford the Big Red Dog, Ugly Dolls, and Woody Woodpecker. People have this image of Illumination being a studio that only makes safe choices, but Meledandri deciding not to make films based on familiar IPs like those proves he's not a producer who thinks only well-known properties sell. Yes, he has produced Seuss adaptations and sequels, but those sequels don't exist without him greenlighting original films like Despicable Me, The Secret Life of Pets, and Sing. And here's an interesting fact: Chris Meledandri is a big fan of Studio Ghibli, and when Illumination was getting started, he tried to get the American distribution rights to Ponyo. It did not happen in the end, but it's nonetheless an example of some of the early ambitions he had for the studio. What he did succeed in doing was a partnership with Nintendo on the Super Mario Bros. Movie. Nintendo was extremely protective of their games, especially after the last time someone made a Super Mario movie. Other Hollywood producers have been trying for years to get the film rights to Nintendo's games, but to no avail. Apparently, Mario creator Shigeru Miyamoto really took a shine to Meledandri and felt he was the best person to produce a Mario movie. As a fan of the games, I was extremely pleased with how directors Aaron Horvath and Michael Jelenic and the rest of the Illumination team pulled it off. It was a faithful adaptation that was also just a really fun movie in its own right. Meledandri's choice of movie directors has also been inspired. Chris Meledandri has been the principal director for most of Illumination's productions and has played a role in giving the studio its familiar brand recognition. However, for Sing, Garth Jennings would serve as director. He came from a music video background, so he brought the required energy and show-stopping feel necessary in putting together the song numbers. He also previously directed the film adaptation of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, so he knew how to handle comedy as well. One of the directors hired for The Grinch was quite the unexpected choice, and that was Scott Mosier. Mosier previously served as Kevin Smith's frequent producing partner, so this announcement caught many, including myself, off guard. However, Mosier had previously directed an animated short for the Sing Blu-ray, so he must have clearly impressed Chris Meledandri with his animation skills, and I thought Mosier, along with Yarrow Cheney, did a lovely job of directing the film. And as mentioned before, Horvath and Jelenic, the creators of Teen Titans Go, directed Super Mario Bros. For Meledandri's next production, Migration, Benjamin Renner was hired to direct. He previously directed the delightful hand-drawn animated films Ernest and Celestine and The Big Bad Fox and Other Tales. Renner was recommended to Meledandri as a possible director by his associates, and he recently revealed at the Annecy Animation Festival that he wanted Renner to bring as much of his personal stamp as possible to the film. Back in 2016, when Universal acquired DreamWorks Animation, they wanted Meledandri to run it, but he turned the job down. However, one thing he's been doing at DWA is trying to relaunch the Shrek franchise. He was an executive producer on Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, and he has been developing another Shrek movie which will have the original cast. He has said that, like with Mario, he wants to hone in on what people loved about the franchise and continue to represent that in the upcoming sequel. Based on his accomplishments, I think Chris Meledandri might be one of the smartest producers working in Hollywood. He has a clear understanding of what appeals to audiences, who are the best directors and other crew to hire for a film, and learning what worked and didn't work about a previous production. His success has certainly been remarkable to watch unfold. See you next time.